Good evening. So happy to have you join me tonight for Good News on Entertainment. I'm Carley Boyette. Tonight, we focus on two movies coming to the big screen this month. The first one is a little heavy, but hopefully it will have you and your loved ones asking some important questions about life after death. And then we will end tonight with a film from Kevin Sorbo that is sure to bring you some laughs and a little romance. But let's get to After Death first. This is actually a documentary-style film that will be showing in theaters starting October 27th. It recounts the stories of several people who say they have had near-death experiences. Some of the stories you may have heard before, like Don Piper's. He's the best-selling author of 90 Minutes in Heaven. He has written several books, and there was even a movie made about his experience. Not only will I talk with him tonight, but I first want to introduce you to the director of this film and why this documentary is so personal to him. But first, let's take a closer look at After Death.
It was 1969, a beautiful day to fly. We were about 100 feet above the ground when I started noticing that something was wrong. It was engine failure. Trees were filling our windshield. I found myself above the crash site. And while I'm processing what I'm looking at, I could see a pilot, and this is me.
No two near-death experiences are the same.
Out of nowhere, a trailer truck hit me head-on. But
They typically occur in a very consistent process.
We began to go down the river, and my boat became pinned. I was drowning.
The first thing that happens is called an out-of-body experience.
And they come to a place of exquisite beauty.
They very commonly see a light. Deceased relatives come to meet them.
the first person I saw was my grandfather. Now I'm traveling like a rocket ship.
Straight upwards. And with that... oh my God, I'm alive. But not every near-death experience is a good one. 23% had hellish experiences.
I saw a black tunnel. I mean, just falling.
I wasn't in fear, I was in terror.
It was just darkness.
Put me back. I don't belong here.
I heard a voice before I woke up.
You still have a purpose on Earth.
I was very skeptical.
I never felt alive and then dead. I felt alive and then more alive.
Had full brain recordings from the dying human brain.
Even though they were unconscious, they were able to give corroborative evidence.
She's describing something she just shouldn't know. This ain't right.
You can't be mystified by that question. What happens after you die?
This really does show that there is life after death.
Stephen, I've been so excited since I had a chance to watch this documentary, to sit down and have a few minutes with you. I'm in love with storytelling. I'm in love with documentaries, and bravo, job well done.
Oh, thanks so much, Carly. Yeah, we appreciate you having me on the program, talk about this film.
You always need to know, like, who is putting the documentary together, because there always is some kind of angle.
Right.
I think it's smart to know, maybe what they're trying to teach us, right?
For
but
sure.
I felt like this string of stories that you've put together was such a great. I didn't feel like it was trying to shove anything on anybody or to persuade them with anything. I mean, obviously, I know a little bit of your backstory and what you're trying to do here, but I feel like you were this is a chance to hear people's stories. Is it not?
That's right. Yeah, that's exactly the approach I had taken with this film. And really the reason for it is, so when I started, and the reason why I started was, so as a filmmaker for something like 15 years now, I've been more in kind of the commercial space and all that. And back in 2012, my brother-in-law was killed tragically in a car wreck. And, that really caused me to ask really difficult questions about, the reality of heaven. I grew up in a Christian home. I went to church all my life. I'm a Christian, and my faith, I would say, was tested, but it was really just kind of tested I believe that God was real, but somehow I couldn't really understand, heaven. And I was really, I was searching the Bible for everything there was on heaven, just suddenly just it was so important for me to know that this was real. And but I was also just kind of I wanted to know kind of open-handedly, um if there's evidence for this, even outside the Bible, like surely if this is true, that there's going to be evidence left behind. Like there's going to be some other way also of pointing me and other people to God. That's what I found in these stories. To my amazement was I came across several stories back then of, there's these published books of Don Piper, for example, 90 Minutes in Heaven, Dr. Mary Neal, who wrote To Heaven and Back. And there's a few, amazing stories that were published. And it's, they're incredible stories talking about, the different ways that they had died for a long period of time and then had these experiences and came back. And I just felt like, it's a pretty big claim to make, if you're saying you're dead for 90 minutes or you're underwater for 30 minutes. Mary was drowned and she was pinned under a waterfall, and she was underwater for about 30 minutes. And this is in southern Chile, which at the time is in their summer. So the water temperature is really warm. So that kind of goes against this, physical preservation of the brain and all that kind of stuff. So really, it's just kind of like there's no way they're coming back from that, right? And somehow they did, and more than that they had this experience. And so, yeah, I mean, I made this film for everyone, and I don't come at this film with kind of preconceived notions. My hope is that people can watch this who have a faith, and people can watch this who don't have a faith and don't have any kind of context for that.
Well, and even the experts and the professors and the ones that have really researched scientifically what happens with the brain and what may be, if there's not life after death, maybe here's some other theories of what's going on. And I love that they are encouraging, when you watch this film, to ask those questions. Like, just don't accept, what everybody says at face value. Like, do your own research. And guess what? God's okay with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's my story, right? So, I feel like God's put me on this path to tell these stories in this film, and it strengthened my faith. In the end, I came out of it with an unbelievable assurance that there is heaven. I mean, I read the Bible in a completely different way. I get into the Word. I pray more and think about God more than I ever did before, because it's so real to me. I think when you face death, and many have, that's the thing, especially, post COVID, grief is something that affects, I think, more people now than it really ever has for such a long time. And yeah, when death came to our family's door, it's like that just kind of caused us we have to face that. We have, we can't hide from it. And suddenly it's a very serious kind of, sobering thing. So.
What was interesting is because I read Don Piper's book, several years ago, and I've heard little bits of other people's stories, over the years. But this is really the first time I've heard in this documentary of where someone had passed, and it was not a pleasant experience, and they were able to come back. That was kind of shocking to hear those accounts, because they're really, I don't know if they're as documented as much.
They're definitely not. No. And I mean, when I set out to make this film too, to be totally honest, I mean, I don't like those stories.
Right? Yeah.
I don't think anyone really does, right? But it's a reality. And that's the thing I was coming to find after talking to so many people who had died, that there was this portion of people that mostly reluctant to talk about it. That they had these hellish they call them hellish near-death experiences. Some other terms they use, like distressing near-death experiences, but overall it was, not pleasant. It wasn't a heavenly experience. And so, yeah, we actually have 3 stories in the film, which kind of balances out, we have 14 people in the film altogether who we interviewed who died and came back, where we have medical kind of documentation around how they died. And 3 of them had hellish near-death experiences. So.
I also appreciated the fact that there were different cultures and different races in this as well, because I think we can get very, I know you're in Canada, here in the
Hmm.
United States, I think a lot of us, we can get very much in our American bubble and what our faith and what that
For
looks
sure.
like here.
Yeah.
And that is, I mean, we've got to break out of that more. And,
Yeah. Yeah,
you
I
know,
mean, and it was also important for us as filmmakers because, if we're honestly asking that question, if it is there a heaven, and if people are having these experiences, I mean, the one argument would be that if all of our consciousness and our mind, or whatever, is tied up to the physical brain, which some may believe, atheists may believe, if that is true, then it should be that culturally what you're surrounded with by is impacting your brain, and when you die you're just seeing whatever you're culturally influenced by. And then, to our amazement, actually, when we started to just kind of go out and ask these questions, I mean, experts have already found this to be the case, but we just, again, it's like we're asking audiences to do. We didn't want to just assume that, so we go out and ask people, interview people who really all around the world. And Steve Kang is one story where he actually was born and raised in his early life and in his younger life in South Korea. And during the time that he was growing up, it's so insulated from Western culture. It couldn't be more insulated. They don't have TVs in homes. They don't have movie theaters. And it's actually almost like like an infiltration, culturally, if religion is if a different religion is preached. So if the gospel is preached there, it's actually an infiltration. So it's looked at, it's shunned. And so, he was raised in a Buddhist home, so completely different religion, totally different culture, and he had this experience that like really matches up with almost all the other people that we talked to. Another lady in Israel who died, and she actually grew up in kind of as an atheist, and different people that we talked to, is like these experiences are overlapping. And I think that was really important for us, because that to me just really hits home that this isn't culturally influenced. This isn't our brains taking in information and then just giving it to us when we die.
yeah. What is your hope as people watch this? And I think certainly when you've lost loved ones, I think we are looking for these answers to bring us comfort here on earth. So I know that must be a little bit of it. But what do you hope people take away with them after they've watched this?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that the film kind of becomes a beacon of hope. That was the reason. That's what it did for me. That's what these stories did for me, and I hope it does that for other people, especially those who are grieving, who are or faced with death. Have been given a diagnosis or something like that. That's they're challenged with that. That reality of is there something after or not. I hope that this film kind of opens that door and provides hope. We want to say that this film it kind of helps people walk through the door of grief and sort of into the room of hope.
I wonder too if more people, now that this is going to be coming out, if more people will reach out and say, "Oh, I had a similar experience." Because I do think it's interesting too. A lot of these people were not believed. A lot of
Hmm.
people are afraid, because they don't want to
Yeah,
sound crazy, and they, I
yeah.
mean, you see even some of the families in the film that you
Hmm.
highlight, their family members didn't believe them.
Absolutely, it's going to happen. I just know, because the conversations I've had with people, even just during the filmmaking process, one of the first stories I told, I got on a plane after finishing it, coming home to Canada, and on the plane, of course, the person next to me, "What are you doing?" And out here in LA, and I explained the story we're telling, and he just goes white as a ghost. And I, what, are you okay? And then he begins to just tell me that 30 years ago he was climbing a hydro pole, and got electrocuted, and he's standing outside of his body 15 feet above, and he's seeing his coworker try and help him and revive him, calling an ambulance. He sees the whole ordeal happen, following the ambulance to the hospital, just the same as all these other stories. I even had a nurse come up to me here in Winnipeg, and she's quietly kind of come up to me, and she whispers in my ear, and she just says, this is happening to a lot of my patients. um I don't know what to do with it. she's just looking for help and guidance because there's so many people who would flatline and are having these experiences. So I think it's a lot more common than we think. And my hope is that, people who've had this experience, that they feel seen.
Yeah. Well, I just want to thank you and commend you for following God's lead on this and sharing these stories and get people talking and asking questions. And I think it's very easy for us, especially the younger you are, to think that death won't come at your doorstep. We want to push that off and
Yeah.
not think about it, not talk about it. But there's nothing more important to do. Again, job well done. And I'm going to be excited to see what God continues to do through this film.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
And it was magnificent. It was like the inside of an oyster. It was pearl and dazzling, almost like it was living. It just looked that way because of the light reflecting off the gate. Heaven is light. God is light. It's astounding. One of the most difficult things about talking about heaven is that you have to do it with earthly words, and there are no earthly words.
What was so fascinating about your story, and I think you hear this in some of the others as well, is you would think that when you have this moment in your life where you get to experience a taste of heaven, that would be so great. And I loved your story, that you were so honest. And I felt like even when I watched the documentary, you were still like, listen, I love my life, I love my family, but this is not my home.
I know what happens next. And if you've been there, you don't want to be here. And it's not a reflection of who's here. I told my father-in-law after I came back, because he was a little frustrated with me. I married his daughter and I'm the father of his grandchildren, that the awesome reality of heaven makes this not seem real to me. And I know it's real. I just had another surgery, so I know it's real. But there aren't any surgeries in heaven. And if you've been there, you don't want to be here. So he said, I get it. I get it now. I was missing there and being here. And I know I'm here on purpose, with a purpose, like we all are, whether we've discovered it or not. But I'd still rather be there every moment of every day. And I can't wait to get back.
How are those memories now that it has been is it over 20 years now since the actual accident?
That's since the book. The
Yeah.
actual accident happened in 1989. So we're going on 34 years.
So how are those memories? Are they still as vivid? I mean,
that's the
it's gotta
word.
be, yeah.
That's the operative word. They are extremely real and vivid, just as real as the moment I took my last breath here and took my next breath there, and I live them every day. One of the profound memories of heaven for me was music. Thousands of songs at the same time without chaos. It was. I brought that back with me. I hear it all the time. And the truth is, the more difficult life gets here, the more weary I grow, the louder that music gets. So I have that with me constantly. It's kind of like the soundtrack of my life. So I can't wait to hear it again, like in person. So yes, I live that. I try not to be, distant or detached. I am very involved in this life, but my thoughts, my hope is to return to our home. That's our home. This is not.
Well, your story continues to change people's lives. It helps us ask questions. This documentary and this movie, I'm so happy that it's going to be in theaters because it's going to continue to do that. And more than anything, we also talked about as we close here, this is what the documentary and the movie is about, is just to get you asking questions. It's not necessarily to persuade any one reason. Let's just have the conversation. And this is why I love movies and films so much, because they spark those conversations.
They do, don't they? And we do hope that people will bring somebody with them
especially somebody who is just dealing with this. Maybe the loss of a loved one, as you well pointed out, or maybe they're confused themselves, or maybe they just don't believe at all. And there's several people in the field who started out that way. So we hope it is it generates thought, and it causes people to say, I've got to examine this. I've got to find out about this. And there are answers. And I found them. I knew heaven was real, but as I said, I wasn't planning to go that day. But who is? You have to be ready all the time, and hopefully people will be motivated by this film.
For more information on the film or how to find a theater near you showing it, just go to the Angel Studios website at angel.com. Okay, now for a redemption story from Kevin Sorbo that he is both producing and acting in, along with some other big names that you're going to love. Miracle in East Texas is a Fathom event and is only scheduled to be in theaters for 2 nights, October 29th and the 30th. Take a look.
So this is Texas. Very flat.
Remember, I just believe the hand of Providence has been guiding our every step. We're going to hit oil right here on your plate.
Doc Boyd did it. While they weren't much good at actually finding or drilling for oil, they both possessed an unusual facility for convincing people that they could do just that.
Oil! I've never felt it so strong in all my life.
Widows were the mother's milk of the petroleum hustle.
Love is not times food.
And now that they had a well, it was time to hit every widow they could find in a 3-county radius.
This well, we can't bring it in. We've already sold close to 500%.
Yeah, so?
You can only have 100% of anything. I just wanted to be square with you because I care for you, man. Give you back the $1,000 I took.
That you swindled from other widows. I don't want you here. I want you out of my house.
We gotta take what we got and get it as far away from Texas as we can get.
You want me to walk away from it?
We're crooks. We've conned all those old ladies.
Yeah, we con those old ladies because that's what we do. I'm an oil man.
Praise Jesus in all his glory.
Lotharios.
He's talking about you.
True hand-to-God miracle is what it is.
That's the gospel truth.
Leave the rest up to Jesus!
Is it true? This is a true story?
True story. Set in 1930. It was.
And the redemption part of it is a true story as well?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't want to give too much away, but yeah. It's called Miracle in East Texas, not only because of the discovery of the oil find in Texas, but just what happens to these individuals. I directed the movie as well. It's a wonderful script from Dan Gordon. Dan Gordon is an Oscar-nominated writer. He wrote The Hurricane for Denzel Washington. He wrote White Earp, Kevin Costner. He wrote 60 episodes of Michael Landon's series, Highway to Heaven. And he brought me the script. I've worked with him before and a couple other things. And I just said, we got to get this movie made. It's just fantastic. And it's a true story about 2 con men played by myself and John Ratzenberger. They went through Oklahoma and Texas, wooing widows out of their money on fake oil wells. And they would sell 500% of the shares, declare a dry hole, move on to the next town. Of course, you couldn't get away with that today, but this is 1930. We didn't have the internet and cell phones back then. They get to Texas, Kilgore, and they strike oil, the largest oil find in the history of the world. And we've been in 10 film festivals. We've won 10 film festivals out there. We won. I love they can't really pigeonhole it because it's got something for everybody, but it's won Best Romantic Comedy, Best Faith Movie, Best Judge's Favorite, Audience Favorite, Family Favorite. So it's a PG-rated movie, which you can take your 6-year-old to this movie. Go to sorbostudios.com. Sign up at sorbostudios.com. A lot of information on other things we're doing, my wife Sam and I. But you just click the link for Miracle in East Texas, put in your zip code, shows you what theater it's showing on, and near you. And we're in 750 screens, and we need to sell these 2 days out. If we sell these 2 days out that we got in movie theaters, then we're going to get more days and more weeks. So we need your support.
Oh man, and I just love this. I mean, the story writes itself,
Yeah.
because it is that crazy where you go, man, this was a true story. But talk about this idea because it reminds me so much of I'm so proud of myself, chronologically finally finished just about the Old Testament of the Bible.
Hmm.
And you see so many times where God's divine kind of sovereign plan, no matter how we think things are going to go, he's always sovereign and he can turn anything for good. And this is the perfect example of that, on how he can use all these events to still line up and work for good.
Well, this isn't like the life of David, but when you read about David, you're going, God picked that guy. So, but really, when God picked these two guys, and you're seeing is believing, and I don't want to give away the end, but what you see at the end of the movie is actual fact, and it's just a wonderful story. And Dan actually wrote the name of the women. Some of the women we con in this movie are the real names of those women back in 1930. So he used the real thing, and people can go online and check that out too. It's pretty cool. I mean, this guy is such a good writer, Dan Gordon, and I got a couple other of his scripts right now. But the toughest thing for us indie guys is trying to raise money for our movies. I mean, we do like $3 million budgets. That's catering budget in Pirates of the Caribbean. So we just are always pulling teeth to try to raise these monies. But I got to tell you, I used to get stopped all the time. And I think we talked about this before because of Hercules or Andromeda. I get stopped all the time now for Soul Surfer, God's Not Dead, Abel's Field, What If. I mean, that's what people stop me for in hotel lobbies and airports now. So there's 80 million homes in this country that want that product.
I want everyone to go and see this movie. We're certainly going to do our best to tell people about it. It's amazing. It's just like you said, it has everything. It has the humor. Several times, by the way, I literally laughed out loud. So I really did enjoy it. And again, the story kind of writes itself. It's unbelievable, that this happened. So keep doing your thing. Kevin, what's next for you?
Well, believe it or not, I got 4 other movies in post-production right now. And I've got 2 documentaries coming out next year that are almost 100% complete. One, I spent 3 weeks in Israel, and I played the real Indiana Jones. Through archaeological digs, we traced the flow of the Ark of the Covenant. It's called The Quest for the Throne. You and I need to talk about that.
I was just going to say, we're going to talk again about that.
And one more documentary that we're almost done with. It'll be out at Easter. And it's a follow-up to my documentary called Before the Wrath. I recommend Before the Wrath. It deals with the second coming. It was the #1 documentary on Amazon for 5 months a couple of years ago. This one deals with the Last Supper, and I love the title. It's called Eating with the Enemy, and people will love this documentary.
Man, always so good to talk with you. We're going to be praying that the next couple of weeks go smoothly for you. And again, that we can get people seeing this movie in the theater. So that means that we can open the door for others to follow after.
SorboStudios.com. One more time, SorboStudios.com. Please support the movie now. We need to sell out those theaters right now.
Oh, we hope you enjoyed tonight's show. I'm Carley Boyette, and I look forward to seeing you next week right here on your Christian television network.